Good evening and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly hangout where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As usual, the standard disclaimer applies. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Please make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. Tonight, as usual, we are soliciting questions and comments from you via Twitter at the Twitter handle @MasonRoundtable, and or with the hashtag TMR episode 31, that's TMR episode 31, or on the Facebook calendar invite. Let's begin with introductions. As usual, my name is John Ruark. I'm the past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957, in Fairfax, Virginia. And I will hand it off to Jason Richards.
Thanks, John. My name is Jason Richards, and I'm the Senior Deacon of Acacia Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia.
Great. Nick.
Nick Johnson, the past master of Corinthian Lodge number 67 in Big Time Farmington.
Brother Juan.
Good evening, brothers. I am Juan Sepulveda, and I am a member of Yolo Lodge number 207 in Orlando, Florida.
And for a special guest this evening, especially given the very enlightening and controversial topic, we have Brother Joe Wages from Plano Lodge, number 768. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's right.
And what town is that located in?
Plano, Texas.
Who would have thunk?
Yeah, who would have thought
it? Excellent. Okay. Thank you again for joining us, and we have plenty to hear from you later on. As usual, we'll start with Masonic news. Just as a reminder, in 2 Saturdays from now, if you're watching this live or shortly after, on 20 September, there will be the inaugural Masonic Educational Symposium in Western PA, where you will see the likes of Brother Juan Sepulveda, Brother Jason Richards, and maybe even me. We'll see.
You'd better show up. We're carpooling.
Yeah. So let's see. So that's we'll have a link again. They are still accepting tickets. They're just have a few seats left to fill, but given the speakers, there's going to be a lot of light shared that evening. So definitely check it out if you can. Love to meet some of you guys in person. Also, let's see. Back to other news. Dare I say, yet again, we have more news about one of the many lodge fires that have been going on. However, this one is back from 2013, and let me bring up the page here, where, again, Chris Hodap has all the latest and greatest, where, as Juan mentioned on one of his earlier Winding Stairs podcasts, about Cincinnati Lodge number 3 in Morristown, New Jersey, guy tried to burn down a Masonic Lodge, and as they were starting the trial, they were trying to lead with an insanity plea. Well, looks like it worked. This guy is a self-declared king and was actually tried as not guilty by reason of insanity. So I don't know what that goes from there. I honestly haven't read the whole article, but it's just here we go. What do you know?
That the man who had attempted to set the place ablaze, he was captured that very same night because a man that was inside of the lodge tackled him and held him for the authorities. Well, he has been in a mental hospital ever since. So he has been awaiting trial at a New Jersey mental hospital. So based on the information that I found last week or the week before, where they were awaiting trial, it was expected that if he was found not guilty by reason of insanity, it was very likely that he would remain in that mental facility for quite a bit.
Gotcha. Okay.
How long? It hasn't been determined yet.
Doesn't he know that all of the kings in Masonry build things? They don't set things on fire. Just.
Well, he probably thought the Illuminati did it.
Yeah, yes. He wanted to illuminate it.
He wanted to illuminate.
Like, well, Masons spontaneously combust anyway, right?
Speaking of Illuminati, That is the topic tonight that I think we have a lot of interest in. And just as a way to set this up, we've been kind of kicking around this idea. The Illuminati always comes up whenever you talk about the Freemasons, especially with pop culture. I even saw something show up on my Facebook feed today about how, yeah, see, look, the Jay-Z's are Illuminati, and he's all connected, and it just all makes sense. It's time to set the facts away from fiction, and that's specifically why we brought on Brother Joseph Wages, who is working on a book that he'll talk about here in a second. That really, he's kind of the resident expert of who the Illuminati were, what they were about, what they accomplished, and where they are today, if at all. So with that, let's let Brother Wages give us a brief introduction of who are they, how did they get started. Now, the first question I had is, it was started by Freemason, correct?
That is correct, but he wasn't a Freemason when he started it.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. So, yeah, tell us about it.
Okay, so Adam Weishaupt, he gets the idea somewhere around 1774 or so that he wants to start this club for basically like restoring humanity back to its original exalted state, or so he saw it. And what he wanted to do, his first idea was he called it a school for humanity. And what he saw as being a professor was that there was plenty of book learning going on, but not really anything in terms of moral education, moral instruction. Kind of like if we think back about college towns these days, you know, there's studying going on, but there's also lots of partying going on at bars. Well, the same thing was going on back then, right? And so he was kind of repulsed by this whole idea of, here's people on the one hand like expanding their minds, on the other hand debasing their bodies. And so he gets this idea that he wants to do something about it. So him being just a college professor, he reaches out to the people closest to him, like 10 of his pupils, and they form a few years later the Order of the Perfectibilists, right?
So this is just one guy who has this good idea and wants to form this order.
Yeah. So
that's kind of anticlimactic in itself, right?
Yeah.
It's not this grand alignment of the planets and then the aliens come down, and it just the birth of it, as reading up on your material, really just, it still seems kind of amazing that it was just one guy's good idea.
Well, in fact, it was some guy, I forget the guy's name, but someone suggested the idea to him. It's like, well, hey, you want to do so much for reforming society like that. Have you ever considered joining one of these secret orders, right? And so he gets this idea, and so from 1776 to 78, they really only have one degree in the whole system, and it's not even a degree. It's kind of like if you joined a club or something like that, you'd want an obligation. So they would take an obligation and be taken under someone's wing, right? And so, like, the first degree doesn't even come about until 1778. It's called the Minerva Degree, and there's the original ceremony, which is kind of devoid of any kind of Masonic influence, and then Adam Weishaupt, about 1777, becomes an entered apprentice in a lodge, and he starts kind of putting some of the more Masonic elements like that into the ritual like that, but it doesn't really, the whole system is kind of not Masonic at all. It's more like a college fraternity up until about 1780, which is even more strange.
So we've got a long period of time. We're talking like 4 years before this thing really kicks off.
Right.
I think it's really interesting that it started off kind of along the same premise of Freemasonry, talking about getting back to virtue and enlightenment ideals. But it really wasn't until a number of years later where Adam said, "Oh, hey, we're doing kind of the same things that the Freemasons are. Let's recruit them." And that was kind of the impetus for him starting to build Masonic ideals into the institution, right?
Right. So, like about 1777, if we look in the correspondence, they start getting the idea to, hey, well, let's take our existing system and we'll merge it with Freemasonry. It'll be a good fertile grounds for recruiting. So the whole impetus for even incorporating Freemasonry into the Order of the Illuminati was a means of expanding their membership base, right? Because they had 10 members who were the Areopagus, right? That's the ruling council. So from 1776 to about 1778, there's only 10 members in this whole club. So it's kind of really anticlimactic at that point.
It's really kind of hard to take over the world with 10 guys.
Exactly. You got to have at least 12.
That's right.
I disagree.
What? Wait a minute.
Wait, we have another special guest.
I apologize. I should have introduced myself. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to me. Wake up, sheeple. 35. Wake up, sheeple. And I don't know about you, but I think that 10 is more than enough, because that's 5 to get the cups and spoons, and then another 5 to plan the party. So, if you understand my meaning.
It all makes sense.
And since it's Masonic, it involves goats, right?
Goats?
It has to involve goats.
And sheep. Oh.
So what happened to these 10 guys? How did they grow?
Okay. Well, so the Order of the Illuminati, like, it really is much ado about nothing. It spreads like till about 1780. It's in some of the local towns in Bavaria. It's very regional. It's only at a university level. These guys, they start getting into Freemasonry about 1777, 78, so they're starting to expand out, right? But back then, like in Freemasonry, it would take a while to advance through the degrees, right? So they're not advanced very Masonically speaking, right?
Did all 10 go through the Masonic degrees?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it becomes a prerequisite later on to advance higher, like anything higher than Illuminatus Minor, which exists about 1781 or so. You can't advance any higher until like you're a Master Mason. And so what kind of gives the backdrop to this whole thing is, like, there's a group called the Strict Observance, right? And they're strictly observing a Templar origin of Freemasonry. So when we hear a lot about how the Freemasons are descended from the Templars and some of the myths and legends, what they're talking about is this group, a guy named Baron von Hund in the 1750s. He's supposedly initiated into this thing by the Knight of the Red Feather, and then but he kind of sits on it for 10 years. Then he develops the Strict Observance in the 1760s, and he dies in 1776. So on his way out, basically there's a power vacuum in leaders, so they're supposed to be watched over by these unknown superiors. Well, the trouble is, upon his death, none of these unknown superiors appears, and the trouble is they don't exist. And so and so it starts sowing seeds of suspicion. Guys are like, well, hey, I want to be one of these unknown superiors. How do I join the club? And the thing is, you can't, because it doesn't exist. And so by about 1780, like that, a lot of the members are starting to demit from the Strict Observance. And one of them is this guy named Baron Adolf.
Does that have a Rosicrucian influence, or?
No, it's more of like they had a lot of the same like utopian ideals like the Illuminati had, but it was more of a top-down thing instead of a bottom-up. It was more of an elitist type thing because they would charge like exorbitant fees for degree fees and things like that, and it was very, very expensive. So it was kind of restricted to the upper classes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Baron Adolf von Knigge, he's a member of this thing, and he's kind of disillusioned with the whole thing, and he gets this idea to start. He's like, well, I'm going to start my own Masonic reform here. I get it that we're not descended from the Knights Templar, and so he wants to write this thing out. Well, what ends up happening is he comes into contact with this guy named the Marquis de Costanza, and he's one of Weishaupt's collaborators. He's like, well, hey, why would you start this existing club? We've got the thing you're looking for right here. And so he goes off for a while and starts. He joins the order. And he's wanting to confer higher degrees, but the trouble is he doesn't have these degrees yet, so he starts writing back and forth, and before long he gets into correspondence with Adam Weishaupt. Well, after talking with him for a while, Adam Weishaupt finally admits and says, look, these higher degrees you want, they really don't exist yet because they're still in my mind, and I haven't really found any worthy collaborators, so what do you say we work together and we'll finish this stuff out? So the irony of the whole thing is, if it wasn't for Baron von Knigge, they could have never expanded this order out. None of the higher degrees would have been written because Adam Weishaupt himself was just barely a Master Mason at this point. So he had no knowledge of any of the higher degree systems or anything like that. So it'd be a very tough sell for him to try and finish this out. So without Knigge, the whole order probably would have fell in on itself sometime around the early 1780s.
Wow.
I think it's really interesting because you take a look at Freemasonry, of course, the United Grand Lodge of England's formed in 1717, but that doesn't mean we had the Master Mason degree right away. The Master Mason degree actually didn't come about until the early, 1730s?
1725, I thought.
1725. Okay, so there's a span of upwards of 8 years where Masonry didn't actually have its pinnacle degree. So it doesn't seem terribly strange to me that the Illuminati went, a number of years before the second gentleman came in without having any substantive degree structure. I think it's just very interesting to see the disparate paths that the organizations travel. Being, Masonry is very much alive and well, and the Illuminati died out after 10, 15 years.
Mm-hmm. So we've got these extra degrees being added on, the higher degrees, like Knigget. Did he author them, or
yes? So what he was doing basically was, it was like a reform of the strict observance, right? Because he saw this system and he thought it had good content, and the strict observance, it kind of got a lot of its ideas from the right of perfection before they existed, right? And so Baron von Hund codifies all these things into the strict observance and adds kind of his own legend on top of it. And so, like, that same kind of, like, building upon a previous system, it carries over. And so Knigge, like, he what does he know? He knows the right of strict observance. So he takes the knowledge he already has and starts expanding on it and reforming it and kind of improving it. And so that's generally where, like, the content he gets from it comes. And he also drew other sources of inspiration, and him and Adam Weishaupt, they would collaborate back and forth on adding content and degrees. So, like, a lot of the lectures are Adam Weishaupt, but the actual structure, names, things like that, that's all Knigge. And he writes everything up until, like, the lower part of the higher mysteries. So the lesser mysteries is where he stops off, and Adam Weishaupt, he attempts to finish the greater mysteries, but the top 2 degrees are in fact unfinished at all.
So how many degrees are there?
At least 4 million, right?
No, it has to be a Masonic number. It's like 99 to the 99th power.
It means something.
So actually, I was trying to find the article that you had co-authored in the was it the?
It was the Working Tools magazine.
Working Tools magazine. Yeah. The March of 13.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Let me see. I'm trying to bring up that article, so because the thing had a good visual description of kind of the breakout of the degree structure.
Do you want me to start from the top and work my way down?
Yeah. Start from the bottom, work your way up, and I'll or the lowest one, and work your way up, and I'll see if I can get that loaded.
So like in these degrees, there's 3 classes of degrees. There's the first class, the second class, and the third class. And the first class of degrees is the preparatory class of degrees. The first degree in that is the novice degree, and that was the one I was telling you about that really wasn't a degree at all. It was more like being under someone's close study for a little bit of time. The next one is Minerval, and then the next degree after that was Minervalus Illuminatus, which was like the superior of the Minerval Assembly, and that was as high as Adam Weishaupt got. Well, Minervalus Illuminatus and Illuminatus Minor, once Knigge joins the order and starts collaborating, they get merged together. Then there's Illuminatus Major, which is also known as the Scottish Novice. And we're in the second class of degrees now, so it's Scottish Novice, Scottish Knight, and these are after the symbolic degrees. So, so to become an Illuminatus Minor, you already have to be a Master Mason, right? So you've already crossed into that category. So roll back up. There you go. So once you're a Master Mason, you can become an Illuminatus Minor. And then only if you're found worthy do you join the Secret Scottish Lodge, which is like a lodge within the lodge. And the officers of that lodge are the same officer for the symbolic lodge, or the lodge for the officers for the Scottish Lodge. And then so you go Illuminatus Major, and then after that is the Scottish Knight degree, or Illuminatus Dirigens. And then you go up to the third class of degrees, when you've got they're separated kind of like the Eleusinian mysteries, where you have the lesser mysteries and greater mysteries. And the lesser mysteries are the priest degree, then the regent degree, and then the greater mysteries is the magus degree or the rex degree. And so that's kind of how it's all structured.
So the rex is the highest degree there, right?
Right.
And so which of those last category of degrees are unfinished? Like, are all of them unfinished, or are there certain ones that are actually?
So everything up to the lesser mysteries, like to the regent degree. The regent degree is where Knigge stops, right? And he stops collaborating, and him and Adam Weishaupt, they get into this big fight back and forth. So he's got these degrees, and the agreement is that he can write whatever he wants to with Weishaupt's input, and then once he has his input, they're able to he can confer all the degrees wherever he wants to once the Areopagus, which is like the ruling council, like you remember those 10 guys I was talking about? those guys. And so once they sign off on all these degrees, they're able to start conferring them. Well, he starts conferring the priest and the regent degrees, and then he gets this packet in the mail, and it says, I want to make these and these changes. He's like, well, wait a second, I can't make these changes in these degrees, because if I do, people will know that we just invented them. And so they get in some epic battle, and it ends up him resigning. So Adam Weishaupt, this whole time, like the creative input for this degree system he's had in his mind has been outsourced to Knigge, right? And so he wants to put his influence back into it. So in the Magus and the Rex degrees, he starts putting his content back into it, and he wants to kind of finish these things out. But ultimately, it never pans out because they get discovered, and he's forced into exile. But what's interesting about it is when we were doing the degrees, we didn't realize this, but he had published excerpts like in the late 1780s of these higher degrees, and for the whole time no one ever knew what was going on. Well, he had large chunks of them published in a couple of different philosophical essays, although he presented them more as like philosophical arguments. So it's just kind of neat after the fact to see that, in fact, he was putting them out there.
Wow. So I counted about 10 degrees. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, sounds reasonable enough.
Yeah, 3 in the beginning, 3 in the middle, and then 4 all the way up to the Rex degree at the end.
Yeah, so it depends. Like, do you count the symbolic degrees or don't you count the symbolic degrees?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, I have a question.
Yeah, one.
Go ahead.
Based on what I'm hearing, you're saying that the growth of that particular organization at the beginning seemed to be slow, and it seemed to be more. Was it localized? Was it more of a regional kind of thing?
Oh, it was totally local, like all the towns in Bavaria. That's why they're called the Bavarian Illuminati, right? So, like, Adam Weishaupt, he's the professor of canon law in Ingolstadt. Ingolstadt's a little town about maybe, 15 kilometers southwest of Munich, right? And so all these little college towns, he's starting to get influence on by the early 1780s. But what kind of puts the rocket engine on growth onto this order is that he gets Knigge, who's a high-ranking, very influential, highly connected member in the strict observance, right? So you've got the strict observance. They're this existing system, and they've been kind of decapitated, right? So they're kind of leaderless like that. You've got people that are not sure which way to go. So people are fighting over. Do we get these members in our club? So Knigge himself, he brings in like over 1,000 members himself.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, like, if there's like just short of 2,000 members, so here you have these power blocks, right? You've got these local guys that are loyal to Adam Weishaupt, but then you've got Knigge, who's responsible for at least half the members, directly or indirectly, it doesn't really matter because they're people that came in under his influence, right? They're people he's connected with. And so there's kind of a power rift inside the order. So when Knigge leaves the order, it kind of sets the kind of the dominoes falling, right? So you got one of the most influential guys who's responsible for half the members, and he leaves, and it kind of sets the ball rolling.
Now, the people they were trying to recruit, catching you from the previous podcast interview that you did, it was really more of the artists and philosophers and that kind of thing, right? It wasn't politicians per se, right?
Right. So what it was, there were some people that were members of the nobility that are brought into the order. They're not brought in so much for their influence like that, as they were already connected to the strict observance system, right? So they were already in that system. They come in, but what the Illuminati's way they were going to reform society was through education, teaching a moral regimen, right? So the Scottish Knights, they're responsible for instituting this moral regimen in the lower Masonic degrees, right? And so, like, what do we call morality, right? So morality, under their definition, is abstaining from violating the rights of others, right? The golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Sounds simple, but it's actually very profound. And so that was kind of the idea for reforming for reforming society, and they were going to do it through education. And by doing it through education, it'd be able to spread, and that was kind of the model.
Okay. So now I'm sensing some lead up now to the beginning of the end, right? The fall, where you say Knigge breaks off, or who is it? The guy that broke off?
Yeah, Knigge, Baron Adolf von Knigge.
Mm-hmm.
And so Knigge he resigns from the order because he gets this packet in the mail and says, okay, make these changes. Well, I'm not making these changes, and they were already kind of feuding along. If you read their correspondence back and forth, they're already feuding up to this point, because Adam Weishaupt, he's kind of dogmatic, likes things his way or no way, and Knigge, he's a pretty nice guy. He's real upstanding. He kind of gives a little bit like that, but at the end he's like, look, I can't do this. This will make me look like a fool. and so he resigns from the order. So once he resigns, then the people start demitting from the order, and then the next thing you know, they come under suspicions of the Bavarian elector, and the Bavarian elector, Karl Theodor, he gets caught up in this deal where he's trying to exchange some land for a title with the Netherlands, and it's kind of a boondoggle for him. So as a distraction, he takes this group that's already, people are like, well, we don't know what to make of this thing like that, and he makes it into a big national scandal or regional, or how about a statewide scandal in Bavaria, and it kind of deflects away a lot of the attention from this this boondoggle he was involved in himself.
Wow.
Now I
think. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
I was going to say, I think it's really interesting that the idea of kind of political scapegoating as fomenting this idea of conspiracy in the Illuminati that's persisted up until today. It's really interesting to me that it started off with one politician going Illuminati, well, meanwhile, his left hand is, embroiled in some conspiracy. And, I see that, we see that in Masonic scapegoating today. A couple weeks ago we talked about one of the leaders of the Russian separatist movement in Ukraine blaming the hostilities in Ukraine on the Western Freemasons, and then ISIS as well. In Iraq, denouncing the president for aiding the Freemasons and their subversion of ISIS in Iraq, and so it's just really interesting that out of all of the organizations, all of the fraternal organizations out there today, the Illuminati and the Masons are really the two that everybody just kind of falls back on to say, oh, scapegoat, done.
Right. So this is, as I'm kind of alluding to, the fall or the end of the Bavarian Illuminati is when?
Okay, so the edicts start coming out about, I think 1785 is the first one, and they have a series. I think there's 3 edicts all in all, and it runs up into the 1790s. And so what happens is like, so Germany at this point in time, it's an empire, right? But it's kind of like a confederation where each state has its own powers in different forms of governmental structure. Some of them are duchies, some of them are free states, some of them are ruled by dukes and what have you. And so basically, when they put these edicts out, it's the state of Bavaria putting these edicts out, right? So it decapitates the order in the south. Adam Weishaupt goes into exile, right? So basically, they're sitting rudderless. So these northern German states, they continue on for a while. And by large, by about 1792, really all the system is gone. And so the guys in the northern lodges, so when Adam Weishaupt goes into exile in 1785, one of the most influential guys in the northern states is a guy named Johann Christoph von Bode. And Bode, he goes in there and he's wanting to take the same thing, to reform Freemasonry, because a lot of the Masonic interests back then were kind of like alchemy and theosophy and things like that, mysticism. And he's like, well, really, the origin of Freemasonry is just that. It's the Grand Lodge of 1717, like that. That's when speculative Masonry gets going. So his idea of reform is what we would recognize today as regular Masonry. And that's what he's trying to do, is to reform Freemasonry back to this. And so one of his ways of doing this is, because a lot of what the...
Just repeat your last statement there.
Okay. Now, so a lot of what the Illuminati were doing in their degrees like that, it's not conspiratorial at all like that. It's teaching morality, virtue, all the ideals of the Enlightenment. And so he wants to apply these same things and do it in such a way as to inculcate it into Masonry, right? So he goes and in 1787 he wants to go to this convention of Paris, and he wants to bring in this Masonic reform. So there's this group called the Philalthes, which is out of this lodge, Loge Améréunie, the Lodge of the United Friends in Paris, right? And he gets an audience with their worshipful master Savalette de Lange, and he wants to go in there and meet with the guy. And so he brings him into the order, and what they agree to is to having a system on top of their system where they take the Scottish novice and the Scottish knight degree, rewrite them, call them something else, where they become the Philadelphes. and he wants to basically to reform their system of all the mystical research and that kind of stuff. And that's really what ends up happening to the Illuminati, is they end up becoming like they kind of like are absorbed back into Masonry.
Okay.
And then the traditional observance movement takes over.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is doing the research for the show and listening to your other interviews and stuff. This sounds like a really cool order. I mean,
Yeah.
It's really not the, control power, political machine that pop culture has made it out to be, but very much a philosophical, getting back to your roots, like I said, getting back to the golden rule kind of approach to bettering oneself. And it's kind of sad that it's kind of lost through time.
What's interesting is so they put the idea out for what Adam Weishaupt, and I think it's the priest degree. He's giving this lecture. It's called Lesson in the First Chamber, and in this thing he's talking about, well, what's the purpose of secrecy, right? Well, secrecy in his system, he defines it as the means of communicating profound truths, so that the candidate and the initiate hangs on every word of it, right? So if I say to you, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, that's yeah, I've heard that in the Bible before. So what's the big deal here? But you do it under the guise of secrecy, with a ceremony and things like that. The candidate's listening to every word, hanging on every little thing, and it makes an impact in his subconscious like that, where he's like, wow, this is a profound truth. And that's kind of what the whole purpose of having secrecy is anyways. And in this lecture they say, look, if it were possible to communicate these ideas to you in just one setting, we would do this, but the trouble is nobody would follow it.
Mm-hmm. So now I'm sure our other guest, Wake Up Sheeple, has a million questions to ask you. Well, let's open it up. What are the conspiracy theories and the other things you may have heard? What do you think, Sheeple?
Go ahead.
Sure. One question I have is, at what point did the Rothschilds join the Illuminati? Because that's one that I've read many times.
Okay, so the Rothschilds Meyer Amschel at this point in time he's doing lending and stuff like that in Frankfurt, in the ghettos, and so he's not a Freemason. He would never have been in the system, and he really didn't even come into his own until speculation, or at least the popular lore goes. What amount of that's true, I couldn't tell you, but he doesn't come into his own until speculating on that Battle of Waterloo is when he's supposed to come into that. So we're talking 40 years later.
So he didn't get any inside information about Waterloo 40 years previous?
Yes, in fact, he was predicting the future with a Ouija board, and he consulted his magic crystals, and it's come true.
That's what I wanted to hear. Let's see. I'm trying to think. So when it was absorbed back into Masonry, what I've also heard is that they then were able to take the 33rd degree, which, as you know, is the highest degree in Masonry, and they were able to hide themselves there to continue controlling government, particularly the French government.
Well, as far as the stories go, them going into Freemasonry proper and absorbing all these things and causing the French Revolution. There's two books. There's Proofs or Memoirs on the History of Jacobinism by Abby Barrell. And then there's Proofs of a Conspiracy, and they're the ones that kind of establish for their own reasons that somehow or another the Freemasonry is connected to the French Revolution, and therefore the Jacobins they're all for killing people and decapitating the kings and queens and overthrowing all the governments and religions and things like that around the world. And really, that's kind of where a lot of these ideas come from, are those two books in particular.
That brings a good point. You have a lot of this skepticism from people of today thinking about Freemasonry as a way to rid people of the connection with religion and the connection with some of these religious organizations. That seems to be one of the attacks that at least I hear being recurrent. So I can't understand the threat that a religious organization would feel by another organization saying, listen, you don't have to look at this religion in order for you to be moral and for you to be virtuous. So, I like seeing those parallels. What's happening today with people blaming us, as Freemasons for trying to get the world rid of religion, supposedly, and back then, people looking at them with suspicion as well. So that leads me to the question, one of the questions that I had for you. I have seen some things mentioned. Unfortunately, I can't find any reputable source about it. The connection between the Society of Jesus and the Bavarian Illuminati, or
Okay.
the Jesuits.
Yeah, so I already know where you're going with this one. So Adam Weishaupt, if you keep in mind, Bavaria at this point in time, like in the early 1770s or so, when Adam Weishaupt's going through college, the whole educational system is controlled by the Jesuit order, right?
Gotcha.
Okay, so he on the one hand, like that, it's very good at teaching. On the other hand, it's not very good in the sense that it's highly restrictive. They're very controlling with their information. A lot of the popular philosophy wasn't available to people. Their style of teaching wasn't really teaching per se. It was more like rote memorization, very dogmatic, very rigid, and stuff like that. And because of the restrictions and the censored books and what have you, he basically sees them as being very dark. On the other hand, he sees their system as being very effective. So the early model of the system, kind of like how Knigge, he gets the idea. Hang on a second here. He gets the idea to copy the strict observance and reform that. Well, Adam Weishaupt, he's brought up under the education of Jesuits, so he models the structure of his order on the Jesuit order.
Gotcha. So
So that's the
definitely
connection.
influenced.
Yeah, it's an influence, but so the Jesuits would have like confessions, right? So it would be a means of intelligence gathering, kind of keeping up on your people and also knowing what's going on in your province, right? Well, the same thing with the Illuminati. They would do this Quibus licet is what they call it, and it was the same kind of system where it's like, write down all the things you thought of this month, all these noble ideas, people you think might want to come in the order. Do you have any complaints against your superiors? If so, what are they? That kind of thing. So it's like it's intel gathering. That was what the whole one of the reasons why he copied that system.
So it's like Scientology.
Exactly.
Without the money.
Or
Hey,
awesome
you-
books.
I thought
Hey,
you
Joe,
were gonna mention
get...
Pope is a Jesuit.
Hey, Joe, getting back to what you were talking about a couple minutes ago, talking about, giving, conveying profound truths under the guise of secrecy in order to make them appear more profound. Isn't that in and of itself a form of mind control? If you're giving people commands under the guise of secrecy, so they'll be more likely to follow those commands.
Only if there's laser beams and strobe lights involved. No, it's kind of like
all the rituals, so you'd be able to tell us.
exactly. No, so
What do you have there?
This is... See, I have my own tinfoil in my actual hat, so this is just tinfoil. But as you notice, I used a pirate hat because it has a parabola to better bounce off the signals. And so I'm currently working on this for my child, who I'm trying to make sure the influences don't get to him as much as they did to me.
You should make one for your poodle as well, because that looks like something a poodle would wear.
perhaps
I would
considering
agree.
perhaps considering closing yourself in a Faraday cage as well.
He would know.
I have
Joe
one
would
of those. I have two.
know too. Just in case. Double wrap.
That's right.
Like a Chipotle burrito.
So, Joe, you should tell us a little bit about the book that's coming out October 31st. Specifically, I was listening to the podcast, The Electric Pyramid, and you have a really cool story about why, this book with all of these primary source materials is coming out now, vice like 30, 40 years ago. Talking about the availability of primary sources now.
Okay, so like when I kind of got started on this whole thing, I'd read about, I'd obviously started with proofs of conspiracy like everybody else, and you read all these things in the book, and you're like, well, I want to know what's true here. But like when I was reading through the book, I noticed, I was like, well, this got badly butchered German words. I mean, things that aren't even rendered correctly. I was like, well, if they can't even get the titles of these books right, what else did they not get right? So I started looking for the primary sources. Well, there's this one that's in English called Some Original Writings. And that book wasn't out at the time, and so there's all these other books that existed, and they would refer to, some original writings, page such and such. Well, you can't read it, you can't reference it, you can't know what's said. It's a paraphrase of this verse. And so I got a graduate student to go and photograph this book that's in the Duke University Library, and the graduate student photographed the entire book for me. I put it up on the web, and it kind of got the ball rolling. And then I found this other one called Better Than Horace, which is it's pretty upsetting. I mean, it's kind of what they call militant deism, where they're kind of poking fun at Christianity and things like that. It was pretty horrible, and it was probably written by a member of the Illuminati, although not an official Illuminati text. And this text got me in contact with Reinhard Markner, and through Reinhard, I was able to get access to all the primary sources and kind of get this project going. So it's been quite a journey over the last 5 years.
So is this the first of its kind?
Oh yeah, it's the first of its kind. So there's 4 really good ritual copies that are left that have like everything up to the Regent Degree in it, right? And so what this is what we started with was all the published text. So everything up to the Regent Degree had been published like totally, right? And so we started with all the published text, transposed the whole things, translated them, and then took the original transposed ones and compared them to every one of the degrees that are in archive, right? And got all the little variations, the nuances, all the best images from the best documents, and put it together. So what we have is really like because remember, the whole system is changing throughout the entire life cycle of the order, and so what we're left with is the most reliable source, and it's a consolidation of all the printed materials plus all the original manuscripts, and so it's about as good as you can get.
It's a monster book, too. It's like 560 pages.
Yeah, they're still typesetting it right now, so I don't know what the final number comes out to, but it's definitely over 500-something pages. What's funny is, like, all these ritual degrees like that, from novice all the way up like that, if you put all that stuff together, like, handwritten pages back in the 18th century, we're talking, like, over 1,000 pages. So it's massive.
Wow. Hey, now I know you also had some images that you'd be willing to screen share with some of our viewers. So if you're on the podcast, sorry, go watch the YouTube. Because there are some really neat things that get a little sneak peek of some of the additional images that are going to be in the book, correct?
Right.
And so while you're bringing those up and figuring out the screen share, another question that I've had is, so given its disbanding or dilution, if you will, back into kind of the mainstream Freemasonry, why do you think this has just become this big thing? Why do you think that they are the scapegoat, the go-to conspiracy theory, if you were?
Sure. So it really what we're dealing with is a contemporary conspiracy theory, and then we're dealing with a modern conspiracy theory. So the contemporary one is for people that were against kind of like the what was going on in the French Revolution, not so much the guillotining part under Robespierre, but just a people's-led democracy, ruling or things like that, kind of not really needing the nobility because man is capable of governing himself through proper instruction. So that's the contemporary impetus for like condemning all that stuff. And of course later it was used under proofs of a conspiracy for electioneering propaganda against Jefferson in the election of 1800. But then the modern conspiracy theory, there's this book, and I want people to go out and look for it right now because there's 2 copies on the web, and you can find it. It's called Roosevelt's Communist Manifesto. It's written by Emanuel Josephson in 1955. All you have to do is read Chapter 1, and in this document, what you get is the modern narrative of the conspiracy theory that the Illuminati, they came to America, and Jefferson was an Illuminatus, and all these different ideas. And that the Illuminati were proto-communist and all these different ideas. It starts in this book that's written under the Red Scare by a member of the John Birch Society. And what you find out in this thing is this whole modern conspiracy, including the obverse of the Great Seal being the seal of the Illuminati. This is the origin of that conspiracy theory as well, and it's freely available if you just search in Google for Roosevelt's Communist Manifesto.
Interesting.
And for those of you watching and listening, it'll be up on the show notes page by tomorrow morning.
Awesome. All right, so what do you got?
My copy, because my copy is already dog-eared. It's a beautiful piece of work.
Is it written in blood?
No tears, really. But,
just as good.
All right, so what do we got on the screen here, Joe?
Okay, so what we're looking at is... remember we were talking about the Scottish Lodge, right? So this is the secret Scottish Lodge. They would have inside there, we've got the ineffable name of on the top in Hebrew characters, and in the and so what you're looking at is on the Scottish Knight degree. This is the first image you see on that degree, and it describes what the chapter seal looks like. So it's universal, so you can put any lodge emblem inside there, and that would be obviously better drawn and made into a stamp. But there's just kind of sketched out in the manuscript.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then we're going to look at this one's really neat. So this is an unpublished cipher. So the top of the Illuminati, there was like this group called the National Inspection. So there's like one over each country, right? And so when he's writing back and forth between other national inspectors or the Areopagus, he would encode anything that he wanted to say in this cipher that looks like sheet music. Well, we've got the fonts and everything built for it. So all the ciphers in this book, we already have the fonts built, and we're going to roll them out when the book becomes available.
Nice.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Now, yeah, so this one right here, there's remember the Minerva degree we were talking about? This is like a drawing. This is a really nice one too, of kind of what the Minerva Jewel would look like. And actually, the little icon I have on my screen under my caption is the actual Minerva Jewel. But so it has the letters PMCV, per me cace vident, through me the blind see. And so this is on the first image on the Minerva degree that you see. Okay, now these two interesting ones, like remember we were talking about the Minerva assembly, right? So image B over there, it's got the little pyramid and the DP, which stands for Deo Proximo, near to God, or God is with us. And that's the tracing board in the Minerva assembly, and behind the magistrate, and the magistrate isn't one person, it's the officers of the Minerva assembly, so they're the magistrate. They have these little tables at the back of the thing similar to like a lodge layout. And so behind them is this little painting of Minerva. Well, it turns out that little painting of the bird and the column and the picture and all that, Adam Weishaupt took it out of a book, and it's actually a Roman amulet. It was some little necklace that was found, and it was published like in the early 1700s. And he copied this image down, although in the image, instead of having the sun there, it's supposed to be Medusa. So I guess the scribe got that one wrong.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, so this next one you're looking at here, it's kind of a layout of a lodge room, and then so you got all these letters in here. When you actually see in the book, it'll have a key underneath it, and it'll tell you what the positions are, who these people are, and all these different letters, and it's kind of showing your way around the lodge room and how a lodge is set up. And then what you're looking at here is the tracing board for the entered apprentice and the fellowcraft degree, and the fellowcraft degree is just slightly different from this one. Then we got like the entered apprentice steps, fellowcraft steps, master mason's carpet, master mason steps. Okay, remember we were talking about the Secret Scottish Lodge. So the worshipful master of the Secret Scottish Lodge, this is the prefect's insignia. So the prefect is the name of the worshipful master in the Secret Scottish Lodge, and so he would wear this little cross, like on over his heart, and all the members in the Secret Scottish Lodge, they would wear these little jewels right here. These knights crosses, like for Saint, it's Saint Andrew on a cross. And the little diamond behind him is green, and on the back side of it, the little diamond is blue, and it's got the ineffable name of God in Hebrew in the back. And then we got the cipher for the Scottish Knights. And what's interesting is all the printed ciphers, even the ones in the manuscript, actually got some of the characters wrong. So we've corrected all that, and in our font that's coming out, it has all of the correct symbols in there in the right order and everything.
Now, are they pure Caesar ciphers or something else?
Oh, yeah, like so, there's substitution ciphers mainly, but if you look at the characters, right? Look at this one. There's no J, there's no V, or not V. Well, in this one it does have a V or a U. Sorry, but in some of the other ones they use like a Latin-based alphabet for a German language thing, so it adds a little bit of complexity to it. But all in all, it's still a substitution cipher. So the interesting one is the National Inspection Cipher, because if you were just kind of looking at it and weren't versed in music at all like that, you would kind of overlook it. So that one was kind of neat, but it's just another substitution cipher at all. So all the ciphers are substitution ciphers.
Very cool.
Yeah, so this one's like it's in the Regent Degree like that, and so these next few images are images in that text, and it talks about what the symbolism for all these different items are. These are different pieces of clothing that they would wear. And then there's the regent's hat, and then his coat that he would wear. And see that little cross in his coat? So the regular regents would wear this coat, but what it's showing you is the superior. He would have this one with the rays coming out of it on his breastplate.
Okay.
And so that's then this one we're looking at here. This is a wax seal of the Minerva Assembly in Frankfurt, and this was off of a really nice ritual copy.
And why the different letters?
Okay, so the SEME, it tells you where it's at. So it's in Latin, like seagulls, ecclese, Minerval, and then this one would be E for a desk, so SEME. And for the Latin character. So the last character, like if you were in Freising, that town is called Thebes, so it would be SEMT. So what it tells you is, like, the last character tells you what town it's in, so they would pick, like, a town from antiquity. So, like, as kind of a means of, encrypting communications and stuff like that, everybody in the order has their own order name. They don't use the regular calendar. They use the Persian calendar for the months and the Zoroastrian calendar for the years. Although it's kind of a modification of it, and then they could encode anything they wanted to in ciphertext, and usually it's like the plain names for people or the plain names for places, and then within cities and stuff like that inside the order, they would assign names from antiquity. So if you were to look at a letter, you wouldn't know who it was by, who it was written to, when it was written, the places described, and then to add a layer of complexity inside of it, you've got enciphered words like that are just probably like regular people's names and things like that.
Nice. All right, Jason, what are they saying on social media?
Oh, let's see. We have a number of wonderful comments from our good friend Carl Weaver on Twitter. He did mention that earlier I did misspeak as far as the technicality is concerned. The pinnacle degree of Masonry has been argued that it's actually the Royal Arch, because we have the first known instance of the writing about the degrees, where it says, the degrees of Masonry are the inner apprentice, fellow craft, and master mason, to include the Holy Royal Arch. So that it has been corrected for posterity and mankind.
Duly noted and amended.
Yes. I order it approved as amended. No, actually, there was an interesting post by Jason on our Facebook page, who actually he asked the question, why the most recent why the emphasis on Illuminati, and why the obsession with Illuminati, especially among Masons over the past couple of years. Do you have any ideas, Joe, as far as why people are coming back to the Illuminati, especially over the past couple of years, when the conspiracy theorists might have been quiet a little while ago?
So, at least from my own personal experience, right? So, like, I come from a long line of Masons, and, like, you try and talk to, like, regular people about Freemasonry these days with all the, the Alex Joneses and things like that. They put these different videos out there at different ideas, some really bizarre ones too. And so people, like, you say, oh, yeah, I'm a Freemason. They're like, oh, you're in the Illuminati. Tell me about the Illuminati. You're plotting to take over the world, and just, weird things like that. And you're like, well, no, that has nothing to do with it. And so, at least in my experience like that, I think that, this whole, like, false association with the Illuminati and Freemasonry like that, it's a total hindrance and blockage on recruiting younger members, right? And so, kind of one of the ideas like that, really, I want to put the book out there for general information's sake, but also we can use this too, like, if we become well-versed in, like, what the Illuminati were, what they weren't like that, so next time, you're trying to talk to one of your peers about, Freemasonry like that, maybe a potential candidate, you've got all the right answers to say, like, oh, no, that's not this, that, and the other. If you want to know what the Illuminati were, read this book here. If you want to know more about it, we can talk more about it. And so, in my experience, like, what I want to use this book for like that is to kind of help remove some of that blockage like that, because there's plenty of, like, really acceptable guys like that should be Masons, but for whatever reason they've got it made up in their mind that these conspiracies are true, and I'm not joining the devil.
Mm-hmm.
But there do exist neo-Illuminati groups, correct, that function publicly?
Like what?
I read on a website called Wikipedia.com that they discussed something about neo-Illuminati groups.
Are you talking about What am I thinking of?
Groups that decide to name themselves Illuminati.
Oh, the OTO? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Well, what's interesting is Jiva, he's a member of the OTO, and you know, he was thinking there's going to be all these connections like that. So he finally gets all the way through the Rex degree and gets it translated. He's like, well, this is a total letdown. There wasn't anything at all that was even close to this. And so, you know, from a member who translated the stuff, yeah, there's zero connection at all, and they're just totally speculating.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, you know, we've gone way past our usual time, which is fantastic because it's been a wealth of information. Joe, I want to thank you again for having us on. There's a million things we could cover. You are definitely the expert, and you know maybe we'll have you on again another time. But we will go around real quick for any final thoughts from everyone or any last questions they had, and then kind of start to wrap things up. With that, let's go right to Wake Up Sheeple. I mean Nick Johnson. I mean, who do I mean?
Hello, I am Wake Up Sheeple 35. Your wonderful and important conspiracy truthist. We don't go by theorist anymore.
Truthist.
And I really enjoyed this talk, and I really was engaged in it. Obviously, I don't believe any of it, but
To be
that's
expected.
because I've done my own research. And so I do want to thank you for this wonderful talk and all the wonderful questions I saw on Facebook.com, your group page, or whatever it's called.
Did Joe illuminate your mind?
Somewhat. But then I had my hat on, so okay.
You're good. You're good.
You can go to my website, which is they'reallwatchingyou.blogspot.com. Although sadly I found out that GeoCities is no longer in existence because I assume the government shut it down because of all the truthist websites out there. So thank you very much, everyone.
You should try Angel Fire.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the treasure trove.
And don't forget the awesome browser Netscape.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Got to have that one.
Usenet.
Oh, jeez. Wow, we're bringing it way back. All right. Brother Juan, any last thoughts, questions, comments, and shameless plugs?
Brother Joe, thank you very much for being on the show. Fantastic. You know, it's inspiring because here we have someone who has really focused on one aspect of the history of Masonry, and you've made it your own. And that's the cool thing that the people that are listening and watching can take out of this. You know, pick something that you're very interested about the order, about Freemasonry, not the Illuminati. And, you know, focus on that. Learn as much as you can about it, you know, whether it's the esoterics, whether is it ritual, is it history, is it, you know, whatever it is, do that. Look, you know, I'm sure that the experience, although it has been many years, it's been long, but I'm sure it's been enjoyable. You know, you can sense it in the way in which you talk about the history of the Illuminati. So thank you for sharing that with us. I think it's very inspiring. Also, let us know, for those that are watching or listening, make sure to subscribe to our channel on YouTube, subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or wherever major podcasts are distributed, and let us know what you think. Did we miss something that you wanted us to cover in this episode? If you let us know, next time we bring Brother Joe over, we'll make sure to cover those things. Plus, the conversation doesn't end tonight. It keeps on going on Facebook, Twitter, wherever. And if you have questions, we'll have access to Brother Joe from now until the return of the Illuminati. And shameless plugs. Find me at thewindingstairs.com, where, incidentally, today I published another episode. I'm very curious to hear your opinion about it. It's a slightly different version of The Winding Stairs, and you'll understand why once you go check it out, thewindingstairs.com. And to check out my art, including a work that I am currently working on. I'm not going to show you. It's on the top of this page.
What?
What?
Yeah.
What?
More
Sign up.
secrecy. It's an Illuminati plot.
The first
It's a
people to
profound
find out. First people to find out are going to be the ones that sign up to my email newsletter at thewindingstairs.com/free book. Thank you again.
Technically, we've all seen it, though.
Yeah.
Everybody here's. We're the first to find out.
Or have we?
Or have we?
Great. Thanks, Juan. All right, Jason.
Okay, I have to lead off with Brother Donnie Dillon, who is becoming, he is rivaling Nick Johnson as the king of memes.
Uh-oh.
And, yeah, he is amazing.
Oh, that
Not as amazing as Nick is. But, you know, anyway, you know, final thoughts on the Illuminati. I mirror John's thoughts. It sounds like a really cool organization that was founded along a lot of the same lines as Masonry, but the one thing it didn't have going for it was the idea of existing from time immemorial.
Right.
And that lack of mystery as far as its beginnings eventually brought about its downfall. And so, you know, that might be one of the things that keeps attracting people to Masonry, the fact that we just don't know how it started. And that's one thing that we have as Masons that, you know, it just goes above and beyond any of the craziness that we can conceive about the group of, you know, the Illuminati. So, I'm Jason Richards. I'm a writer. I do a lot of things. I haven't written on my blog in a while. I'll get on to that. I'm also going to be submitting a piece to the Midnight Freemasons here in the next week, so check that out. Also check out Masonic Radio Theater. I'll put a link to that up in the show notes. That's Brother Bill Hosler and Robert Johnson. They're putting together some Masonic radio dramas, and they are absolutely fantastic. They'll be good fun coming out in the next 3 to 4 weeks. And thank you all so much for watching. Check out the website, www.theMasonicRoundtable.com. I'll have some cool show notes up by tomorrow morning, so check it out and let us know what you liked, what you didn't. And off to you, Brother Joe.
All right, yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. I just want to say thank you for having me on as a guest this evening. It's been a lot of fun. Only thing I really want to plug is just, you know, in October 31st, the book's coming out. We're going to have some regalia and stuff like that. Actually, all the regalia for the order for sale for collectible purposes. It'll be launching right about the same time as the book comes out. So, and there's also going to be, you know, little fun, little free things like that, like all the different fonts for the Cipher. So if you want to have your own Illuminati correspondence, I'm sure you can manage. And that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks again. I do appreciate it.
And the book link is live now on the website. So go there now and you can pre-order it right away.
Yes, do that.
Yeah, you can pre-order Lewis Masonic, and then you can buy it at Amazon and also I think Barnes & Noble and, you know, other major bookstores on October 31st.
Very cool.
Great.
Looking forward to it. All right. As for me, final thoughts. Jason really kind of reemphasized what I was going to say, which was, you know, it sounded like a good thing. I was really surprised in doing the research how cool it kind of was, that it was not a conspiracy type thing. It was actually very philosophical. It had some structure to it. It had some thought put behind it. It may have rehashed a lot of things that are already out there, but you know, philosophy often does. By the way, if you really dig back and try to look at where some of these core philosophical elements come from, you see a lot of repeats over time through history. But I learned a lot. And definitely have a different perspective. Thank you, Brother Joe, for all the hard work you did in putting this book together. Very enlightening, and I encourage everyone to go check that out. Again, thanks for supporting the show, everyone. Feel free to donate, buy a pin, helps us out. And with that, thank you for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.